doesn't need that much of an introduction. She's fabulous. Let's welcome to the stage Miss Sarah Rundle, please.
So we've had so many tricksters. Let's see a trickster that actually lost something dear to them. This is a Chinese story. You've heard it, so shut up. I want nothing out of you. Okay, I'll make it up to you later. Okay, there was a man called Peach Thieves. And he was a real man who lived about 1,300 years ago, and he was a complete failure. Because he failed all his, well, not all of his exams, he failed almost all his exams. In those days, if you wanted to join the Chinese civil service, you had to pass 3 levels of exams. Level number 1, budding talent. Level number 2, the man raised up. Level number 3, advanced scholar. And you had to pass a literary exam, so you had to write an essay about the dew on the chrysanthemum blossoms. And that set you up for a life of ruling an area or commanding an army. Stupid Chinese. Why can't they train their... I mean, what use is that? Why can't they train their civil servants to speak in plain language, like, oh, I don't know, incentivising stakeholder rollout going forwards? So this Peach Thieves, he failed his 2nd and his 3rd levels of exams, and in those days you took them and retook them and took them again until you were in your 70s, and he was a failure all his life because he only passed the 1st level, and he had to get a job as somebody's private secretary. So he was never a success. But what he did do with his spare time, he gathered strange stories and he wrote them down in a manuscript. Things like, my mate Wang went into Beijing and he went into a market and there was a man there with a little wooden tray with divisions, and in each division crouched a little frog. And when the man tapped the frog, each frog emitted a different musical croak. And if you paid the man some money, he would tap out a tune. Weird! How weird is that? So this is one of his stories that he collected into a manuscript, which was copied and recopied and has been copied for 1,300 years. So not so much of a failure now. And this is something that Peach Thieves actually saw himself. He had gone into town. It was the time of the early spring festival, early February. The snow was thick on the ground, but it had been swept clear in the town square because it was the time for the festival. Now, he'd gone in to take an exam. I don't know whether it was one of the ones he passed, but who cares? And there was all this bustle in town. There were people selling hot dogs. And there were, it took you a while, and there were people flying kites, and there were people wearing their best red robes, and there was a dais, and on the dais there were 4 civil servants trained in the art of writing lyrical poems on the dew of chrysanthemum blossoms. And a man came into this marketplace. He was a stranger. He had a tousle-headed son with him, a young lad about your age. And this man had 2 baskets from a yoke over his shoulders. And he came up, he knelt in front of the dais where the august civil servants sat, and he said something to their servant. And the servant announced to the company at large that this man, Chang, could do a spectacle for the festival. Did they want a spectacle? Do you want a spectacle? Yes, yeah. Good, yes. And the mandarins sent their servants to inquire what spectacle the man could do. And Chang announced that he could make the seasons go backwards or turn nature on its head. Impressive. And so the mandarins consulted one with another about what kind of show they would like. And they sent their servant to announce that they wished to have a peach. A peach in February. Now, remember, no Tesco's, no Morrison's. How are you going to get a peach in February? And the man grumbled. He said, this is very hard. They want a very hard thing. And the son said, but Dad, you promised their worship's a spectacle. And the father took off his jacket. He hung it over one of the baskets. He spat on his hands. He said, there's only one place we're going to get peaches this time of year. It's the garden of the Queen Mother of Heaven. We're going to have to go up there. From the other basket, he took out a rope with a wooden hook at the end. He flung it up. It caught in the clouds. He played it out. It went up and up and up, disappearing among the towering clouds. Then he called for his son. Come on, oi, pay attention. You, yes, you. You're going to climb up into the clouds. And the son said, oh, Dad, it's too hard. And now it's the dad's turn to say, we promised their worship's a spectacle. Up you go. And the lad disappeared, hand over foot, climbing this rope. Disappeared among the clouds. And then down, thudded a round, enormous, juicy peach, fragrant, with a skin like a young mouse. And the man, Chang, gave it to the servant, and the servant took it to the mandarins, and the mandarins stroked it and prodded it and sniffed it, couldn't quite believe it was real. And just as they were thinking, oh, that boy ought to be coming down now, the rope came down and the end had been cut. And the father wailed and he said, how is my son going to get down now? The caretakers of the Queen Mother's garden, they must have found him. What are they going to do? They're going to beat him. And then another fruit came down, round and ripe, strange fruit. This was the head of the tousle-headed boy. The father picked it up. He put it carefully in his basket, and then down rained hands, feet, arms, legs, a torso. He gathered each piece, put it into his basket. Then he knelt in front of the mandarins. Your worships, that peach you hold has been won at the cost of my boy's life. Now there is no one to guide my faltering footsteps as I grow old. No one to close my eyelids when I breathe my last. No one to light the candles on the altar of the ancestors. I pray you, sirs, give me some money so that I can bury my boy decently. The first mandarin looked at the second mandarin. The second mandarin raised an eyebrow to the third mandarin. The third mandarin nodded to the fourth mandarin. The fourth mandarin took out a purse of gold and gave it to the servant, who took it to the father, who tucked it securely into his belt. He bowed to the mandarins and then rapped on the top of the basket and said, come on out, Baba, and thank the gentleman. And out jumped a tousle-headed boy. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have been Chang and Sons, and you've been a marvellous audience. Weddings, picnics, bar mitzvahs, christenings. We'll be back next Spring Festival with